Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, not to the gilded palaces of emperors or the serene gardens of scholars, but to a place of grit, sweat, and endless toil, the very foundation of one of history's most iconic structures. We're going to get our hands dirty and feel the heavy weight of a basket filled with earth on our shoulders. This isn't a story of glorious battles or royal decrees, but of the people who built the impossible with their bare hands. It's a journey through the sheer scale of human effort, and let's be honest, you probably won't survive the first winter. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you in the comments below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your journey begins in the late 3rd century BCE. The year is approximately 221 BCE, and a man who calls himself the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, has just unified the warring states of China under his single, iron-fisted rule. He's a fascinating, terrifying figure, full of grand visions. His grandest vision? A unified defensive barrier to protect the new empire from the nomadic tribes of the north. They call it the Long Wall, and its construction requires a workforce of unimaginable scale. A decree is read in your village, and your name is on the list. You are conscripted. You don't have a choice. The alternative is death. A wave of dread washes over you. You look at your family, at the fields you've always known, and you know deep down, you may never see them again. You are now a cog in the emperor's grand machine. You've been plucked from your peaceful, simple life and dropped into a reality of brutal efficiency and forced labor. This is the new normal. You're one of hundreds of thousands, if not a million, of conscripts. The numbers are staggering. The workforce isn't just made up of farmers like you, but also soldiers, criminals, and political exiles. Historians still argue about the exact number, but everyone agrees it was an immense undertaking, a testament to the absolute power of the emperor. You're forced into a long march north, away from the familiar warmth of your home. You walk for weeks, your feet blistered and sore, your meager rations barely enough to keep you going. The air grows colder, the landscape more barren. As you travel, you see the true cost of the emperor's ambition. Roads are being built, canals dug, and now this wall. The scope of his projects is breathtaking, and you are just a small, expendable part of it all. You arrive at the site, and the first thing you notice is not the wall itself, but the sheer chaos of it all. There are thousands of men just like you, all huddled together, cold and scared. The overseers, armed with whips, shout orders in a language you barely understand. A mainstream historical fact is that the early wall sections weren't the beautiful stone and brick structures we see today. They were mostly tamped earth and gravel, a technique called hangtu. Imagine stacking layers of earth and then pounding it down with heavy mallets until it's as hard as concrete. It's a method that sounds simple, but requires immense effort and a relentless pace to be effective. The ground trembles beneath your feet, not from an earthquake, but from the rhythmic pounding of thousands of men, their mallets rising and falling in unison. This is your new reality. You are now a builder of the Great Wall. A quirky tidbit, perhaps, is that these early walls were often built in a staggered pattern, like a modern-day brick wall, to increase their stability against both erosion and attack. The architects of the Qin dynasty, for all their brutality, understood the basic principles of structural integrity. You are given a heavy, two-handled basket and a shovel, and you are pointed towards a loose pile of dirt. Your task is simple, yet brutal. Move the earth. You trudge to the quarry, where other men are hammering away at the stone with primitive picks and mallets. The sound is a constant rhythmic clamor that echoes across the hills. You shovel the loose earth and stone into your basket, the weight of it straining your muscles. Then you begin the slow, arduous walk to the wall. The path is uneven, and you stumble often. With each step, the weight digs into your shoulders, and you can feel the calluses on your hands growing harder and more painful. It's an endless cycle. Walk, dump, walk, dump. You do this all day from sunrise to sunset with only a short break for your meager midday meal. You look around at the thousands of other men, their faces grim and weary. You are all in this together, a silent army of builders, marching to the beat of an emperor's ambition. You look up at the unfinished wall, a long, sinuous scar across the landscape, and you wonder if it will ever be finished. You wonder if you will ever be finished. You're a long way from home now. The landscape is nothing like the fertile plains you left behind. It's a harsh, unforgiving place of jagged hills and dusty scrubland, with a chilling wind that seems to whisper of your foolishness for being here. Your new home is a temporary camp, a sprawling collection of crude makeshift shelters made from mud, straw, and whatever scraps you can find. There are no comforts here, no soft beds or warm hearths. You sleep on the hard ground, huddled with other men, trying to share what little body heat you have. The air is thick with the smells of unwashed bodies, stale food, and the ever-present dust. The food is meager, a thin, watery porridge of millet or rice, and sometimes, if you're lucky, a salted vegetable or a piece of tough dried meat. The rations are barely enough to sustain the back-breaking labor you're forced to perform each day. You're always hungry, a dull ache in your stomach that never truly goes away. You've become a master of a kind of morbid arithmetic, constantly calculating how much energy you'll get from your food versus how much energy the day's work will demand. The numbers never seem to add up in your favor. The day begins before dawn. A horn blares, a harsh, grating sound that tears you from your fitful sleep. You stumble out of your shelter and line up with the others, shivering in the cold morning air. The overseers, armed with their whips and their cruelty, don't care if you're tired or sick. They count the men, and then the work begins. Your task is simple, yet brutal. Move earth and stone. You're given a heavy, two-handled basket, and you're told to fill it with dirt and rocks. You trudge to the quarry, where other men are hammering away at the stone with primitive picks and mallets. The sound is a constant, rhythmic clamor that echoes across the hills. You shovel the loose earth and stone into your basket, the weight of it straining your muscles. Then you begin the slow, arduous walk to the wall. The path is uneven, and you stumble often. With each step, the weight digs into your shoulders, and you can feel the calluses on your hands growing harder and more painful. It's an endless cycle. Walk, dump, walk, dump. The work is relentless. There is no such thing as a day off. You work through rain and shine, through blistering summer heat and the first chilling winds of autumn. The rhythm of your life is now the rhythm of the work. The pounding of mallets, the scraping of shovels, the shouts of the overseers. A mainstream historical fact about this period is that the wall wasn't a single, continuous structure from the start. Instead, it was a series of regional walls built by different states that the Qin dynasty connected and fortified. Imagine the logistical nightmare of taking a bunch of different smaller projects and trying to link them all together into one massive defensive line. It was a project of unprecedented scale and ambition. A quirky tidbit is that the overseers sometimes used a mixture of rice flour and lime as a kind of early mortar to bind the tamped earth, making it even more durable. Historians still argue whether the primary purpose of the wall was military defense against nomadic invaders or simply a show of the emperor's absolute power, a way to keep his populace busy and unified under a single grand project. Either way, for you, it doesn't matter. It's just a wall of dirt and stone, a monumental effort that is costing you your strength, your health, and your hope. The sun beats down on you, and a fine layer of dust covers everything. Your clothes, your face, your hands. You look around at the thousands of other men, their faces grim and weary. You are all in this together, a silent army of builders, marching to the beat of an emperor's ambition. You look up at the unfinished wall, a long, sinuous scar across the landscape, and you wonder if it will ever be finished. You wonder if you will ever be finished. The sun rises and sets, and with each passing day, the wall grows a little longer, a little higher. You are no longer just a farmer. You are a builder, a beast of burden, and a survivor. The tools you use are crude but effective. Your primary tool is the heavy basket, but you also learn to use a pickaxe to break up stubborn earth and a shovel to move it. For the stone, you and your comrades work in teams, using heavy iron mallets to chip away at the rock face. You quickly learn that brute force isn't always the answer. Sometimes it's about finding the natural fault lines in the rock, or using a wedge to split a large boulder. This knowledge isn't taught. It's passed down from one weary conscript to another, whispered in the cold darkness of the camp at night. There's a grim camaraderie here, born of shared suffering. You watch as a man collapses from exhaustion, and you know it could be you tomorrow. You help a fellow laborer carry his load when his strength fails, knowing he would do the same for you. The construction methods are surprisingly sophisticated for their time, despite the lack of modern machinery. The hang-to technique is central to the wall's construction. Imagine a wooden frame, like a long, shallow box. You and your team fill it with layers of loose earth, clay, and gravel. Then, with heavy, flat-headed mallets, you pound the earth down, layer by layer. The pounding is rhythmic, a chorus of heavy thuds that becomes the soundtrack of your life. The goal is to make the earth so dense and compacted that it becomes almost as hard as concrete. Once a section is finished, the frame is moved to the next segment, and the process begins again. The wall isn't a solid block of stone, but a layered cake of tamped earth, sometimes reinforced with stone and timber. You feel the constant vibration of the pounding mallets, not just in your hands, but deep in your bones. A mainstream historical fact is that these Qin dynasty sections of the wall, built primarily with tamped earth, were not only incredibly labor-intensive, but also surprisingly resilient, with some portions surviving for over 2 millennia. They were designed not just to be a barrier, but to withstand the elements and the passage of time. A quirky tidbit is that the overseers sometimes added a layer of small, sharp stones or gravel on the top of the tamped earth sections to make it more difficult for raiders to climb. It was a simple, brutal addition to the design. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness of the wall was in its physical barrier or in its psychological impact, acting as a clear symbol of the empire's power and a deterrent to smaller-scale raiding parties. To you, it's a testament to the fact that humans can be molded into tools. just as easily as they can be shaped into builders. You look at your hands, calloused and torn, and you see the tools of your trade. They are not the hands of a farmer anymore. They are the hands of a wall builder. You have learned to find a rhythm in the work, a way to move your body that conserves energy. You learn to breathe through the pain and the exhaustion. You have to. Survival depends on it. There is no alternative. Every day is a battle against the elements, against the exhaustion, and against the hunger that gnaws at your insides. But you keep going. You have to believe that one day you will be able to go home. You have to believe that there will be a day when the pounding stops, the dust settles, and you can rest. Danger is your constant companion. It's not just the backbreaking work that wears you down, but the environment itself. The mountains are treacherous, the paths uneven. You've seen men slip and fall, their bodies tumbling down the steep ravines to an unseen end. A sudden landslide can bury a whole crew in an instant, a silent, deadly force of nature. But a more insidious threat is the disease that festers in the crowded, unsanitary camps. Dysentery, fever, and respiratory infections sweep through the population like wildfire. You watch as a man a few shelters down from you becomes weak and delirious, his body racked with a cough. Within days he's gone, his body unceremoniously taken away. No one speaks of it. You just fill his spot in the line the next morning and keep working. There's no time for mourning. A mainstream historical fact is that the death toll during the Qin dynasty's construction of the wall was staggering, with some estimates reaching into the hundreds of thousands. The wall was not just built with stone and earth, but with the lives of countless men buried in its very foundation. This is why the wall is sometimes called the world's longest cemetery. The food is your main enemy. The rations are often spoiled or infested with vermin. You learn to eat anything you can, no matter how unappetizing. You dream of the simple meals you used to have at home, the bowls of steamed rice and fresh vegetables. Here, every mouthful is a battle. You fight with the rats for scraps, and you fight with the other men for every last grain of your porridge. The hunger gnaws at you, a physical pain that is worse than any ache in your muscles. You get used to it, in a way, but you never stop feeling it. A quirky tidbit is that in some remote areas, overseers would use a mixture of herbal concoctions, often including willow bark, as a crude painkiller for the laborers, though it was a rare and precious resource, not something everyone had access to. You watch as a man with a festering wound is given a small dose, and you see the brief relief on his face before the pain returns. Historians still argue whether the high death toll was a result of deliberate cruelty from the overseers, or simply the inevitable consequence of a project of such immense scale and logistical difficulty. For you, it feels like both. The cruelty of the overseers is real, their whips a constant threat. But you also know that the sheer impossibility of feeding and caring for so many men in such a desolate landscape makes their lives expendable in the eyes of the emperor. You are just a number, a statistic in a grand and deadly project. You look at the wall rising before you, a monument to human ambition, and you see a monument to human suffering. You are part of that monument, a living stone in its foundation. You have to keep going. You have to believe that you are not just a number, that you are a person, and that your life has a value beyond the work you are forced to do. You have to believe that one day you will be able to tell your story, even if it's just to the stars in the cold, clear night sky above the camp. As the seasons change, so too does the work. You arrive at the site in the spring, when the air is still crisp and the ground is soft with mud from the melting snow. The summer brings a relentless, scorching sun that bakes the earth and dehydrates you. The heat is a slow-burning torture, sapping your strength and making every movement an effort. But it's the winter that truly tests your will to live. The northern frontier is a place of brutal cold. The biting winds whip across the barren landscape, and the air becomes so cold that it hurts to breathe. The ground freezes solid, making the digging of earth and the quarrying of stone nearly impossible. The rhythm of your work changes, but the labor does not cease. Instead of moving earth, you're tasked with moving heavy stone blocks, a punishing job that leaves your fingers numb and your body aching. You live in constant fear of frostbite. Your meager clothes are not enough to keep the cold at bay. You huddle with the other men in your shelter at night, trying to share what little warmth you can generate. The fires you're allowed to have are small and carefully monitored. The firewood, a precious commodity that's often in short supply. You've seen men lose their toes and fingers to the cold, their blackened flesh a grim reminder of the harshness of your new reality. The wind howls outside, a mournful sound that seems to mock your suffering. The snow blankets the hills, turning the world into a vast white expanse that seems to go on forever. A mainstream historical fact is that the northern winters were a major factor in the high mortality rate of the laborers. The lack of proper clothing, shelter, and nutrition made them extremely vulnerable to the cold and the diseases that came with it. The wall itself, however, was designed to withstand these harsh conditions. Its deep foundations and tamped earth construction were made to resist the freeze-thaw cycles that would destroy a less sturdy structure. A quirky tidbit is that some of the wall's watchtowers were built with hollow cores, not for storage, but to allow a small fire to be lit inside, creating a kind of chimney effect that would keep the soldiers and guards inside from freezing to death. This rudimentary heating system was a small but vital innovation for the men who manned these desolate outposts. Historians still argue about the exact number of men who died building the wall, and whether these deaths were a necessary evil for the creation of a unified China or a monstrous act of cruelty by a tyrannical emperor. For you, it's not a historical debate, it's a daily reality. You are one of the living, and you are determined to stay that way. You think of your family, of the warmth of your home, and you use those memories as a shield against the cold. You tell yourself that every stone you place, every shovelful of dirt you move, brings you one step closer to the day you can go home. It's a small lie you tell yourself, but it's enough to keep you going. You look out at the snow-covered wall, a long winding dragon across the hills, and you feel a strange mix of pride and bitterness. It's a monument to your suffering, but it's also a testament to your endurance. You are a part of this history, a living, breathing part of the Great Wall. The wall is a living thing, a scar across the landscape that twists and turns with the terrain. You're no longer just building a straight line, you're building watchtowers. These are not simple piles of earth. They are complex structures, often made of stone and brick, with multiple levels and strategic placement. Your new job is to haul these heavy, precisely cut stones up steep hillsides. The process is slow and grueling. You and a team of men use a system of ropes and pulleys, but it's still your muscle and your sweat that get the job done. The stones are heavy, their edges sharp against your skin. You feel the strain in your back, in your legs, and in your arms. Each stone represents not just a piece of the tower, but a moment of your life, a small piece of your soul you've left on this desolate mountain. The overseers still watch over you, but there's a new, almost frantic sense of urgency to the work. The watchtowers, they say, are what will make the wall a truly effective deterrent. They are the eyes of the emperor, peering out into the vast, empty north. The watchtowers are more than just part of the wall. They are the eyes and ears of the empire. From their heights, soldiers can see for miles, looking for signs of approaching nomadic raiders. They are equipped with signal fires, so a message can be sent from one tower to the next, covering vast distances in a short amount of time. You help build the internal stairs and platforms, each step a testament to the fact that this is not just a wall, but a system of defense. You learn the different kinds of signal smokes, a puff of black smoke for a small raiding party, a thick plume of white for a full-scale invasion. You are building a vital part of the Empire's communication network. A mainstream historical fact is that this signal system, using smoke by day and fire by night, was an incredibly effective form of communication for its time. It allowed the Central Command to know about a threat on the frontier in a matter of hours, a speed that was unheard of in the ancient world. A quirky tidbit, perhaps, is that the builders sometimes added a small ceremonial piece of jade or a coin to the base of the tower, a quiet offering to the local spirits to ensure the structure's stability and longevity. It was a small act of hope, a plea to forces greater than the emperor to watch over their work. Historians still argue whether the watchtowers were more for military communication or a form of psychological warfare. Their sheer number and imposing presence designed to intimidate any potential invaders. For you, the purpose is simple: to keep you working. You see the towers as landmarks, a way to measure your progress and your suffering. You know that each finished tower means you are one step closer to the end of your service, even if that end feels like a distant dream. The work is hard, but it's different. It requires a kind of precision and care that the simple wall building didn't. You have to place each stone just so, to make sure the tower is stable and strong. You are no longer just a beast of burden. You are a craftsman, a builder of something with purpose and form. You are a part of the wall, and the wall is a part of you. You can feel its weight in your bones, its dust on your skin, and its long, winding form in your dreams. The echoes of the hammers and the cries of the overseers are gone, replaced by the rhythmic chipping of stone and the silent, focused concentration of a stonemason at work. You are a different man now, forged in the fire of the wall, and you know that your life will forever be intertwined with its fate. The wall itself is becoming a personality, a looming presence on the horizon, a character in your own life's story. The Qin dynasty's iron grip on the empire and its massive projects, including the wall, eventually gave way. You live long enough to witness the end of the first emperor's reign, a period marked by rebellions and chaos after his death. The empire collapses, and with it, the centralized, brutal effort to build the wall. You, along with countless others, are suddenly released from your servitude. But to what? The world you left is gone. Your village may not exist anymore. You've forgotten how to be a farmer. All you know is the rhythm of the mallet and the feel of a heavy basket on your shoulders. The wall you helped build is left unfinished in many places, a testament to a grand ambition that outlasted its creator. The great symbol of imperial power becomes a forgotten relic, its tamped earth sections slowly eroding back into the hillsides from which they came. But the story of the wall doesn't end there. A few decades later, a new dynasty, the Han, rises to power. They look at the northern frontier and see the same threats from the nomadic tribes. They don't just see a scar on the landscape, they see a vital, if incomplete, defensive line. The Han emperors decide to expand and reinforce the wall, and the call for laborers goes out once more. You're too old now, but your son and his son are conscripted. The cycle begins again, but with a different purpose. The Han dynasty's approach is more organized and more strategic. They don't just connect the old Qin sections. They build new parallel sections to create a more robust defensive system. The wall's purpose evolves from a simple boundary to a complex network of fortifications. A mainstream historical fact is that the Han dynasty extended the Great Wall far into the west, along the Silk Road. This wasn't just to keep invaders out, but to protect the vital trade routes that brought prosperity to the empire. The wall became a symbol of economic power as much as military might. It was a strategic decision that changed the very nature of the wall's existence. It went from being a blunt military instrument to a sophisticated piece of commercial and geopolitical infrastructure. A quirky tidbit is that the Han builders sometimes used materials that were more readily available in the desert regions, such as sand and gravel mixed with a unique binder of straw and tamarisk wood, to create sections of the wall that were surprisingly durable. These natural materials, when packed tightly, created a structure that could withstand the desert winds and the passage of time. Historians still argue whether the Han dynasty's wall was a more successful military project than the Qin's, given its strategic placement and focus on protecting trade. For your family, the work is still hard, but there's a subtle shift. The camps are a little more organized, the rations are a little better. The overseers are still harsh, but the sheer, senseless brutality of the Qin era seems to have lessened. Your son works on the wall, but he is also a part of a new, growing empire. He is building not just a wall, but a future for the trade caravans that will pass through its gates. He is a builder, but also a protector. The wall is no longer just a monument to suffering. It is a symbol of a new era of prosperity and power. The generations of your family have become inextricably linked with the wall, each one adding their own small piece to its grand, winding story. The wall's long shadow stretches across the land, and in that shadow, your family's history is written. The wall has become your home. The life of a builder has given way to the life of a soldier on the frontier. You're part of a garrison, stationed in one of the very watchtowers you once helped build. The work is still hard, but it's different now. The enemy isn't the relentless sun or the bitter cold. It's the unknown. The nomadic tribes, the Xiongnu, are a constant threat. They are fast, mobile, and unpredictable. You spend your days patrolling the wall, your eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. The watchtowers, with their signal fires and smoke, are your lifeline. You stand guard on the parapet, feeling the same wind that once chilled you to the bone. Now, however, you have a purpose. You are not just a builder, you are a defender of the empire. Your days are filled with the monotonous routines of a soldier's life. You practice with your bow and arrow, your spear, and your sword. You learn to read the signs of the land. A broken branch, a disturbance in the dust, the distant cry of a hawk, any of which could be a prelude to an attack. The nights are long and cold. You and your comrades huddle around a small fire, telling stories and sharing news from the distant capital. The wall, with its lonely sentinels and its sprawling network of watchtowers, is a world unto itself. The camaraderie you felt as a builder is now a soldier's bond, forged in the shared understanding of your mutual purpose and the constant threat you face. A mainstream historical fact is that the Han Dynasty's military strategy on the Wall was not just defensive. They used the Wall as a base to launch punitive expeditions against the nomadic tribes, pushing them further north and securing the trade routes for longer periods. The Wall became a launching pad for empire expansion, not just a static barrier. A quirky tidbit is that the soldiers on the Wall often used a special type of pottery whistle, or nzun, to communicate short, coded messages to each other over long distances when a signal fire was not appropriate. Historians still argue whether the Wall was an effective military deterrent or if the cost of maintaining the garrisons and supplying them was too great for the empire's resources. For you, the debate is irrelevant. Your life is on this wall. You eat, sleep, and fight on this wall. You watch the sun set over the vast, empty plains, and you know that you are a part of something much larger than yourself. You are the shield of the empire, and the wall is the instrument of your purpose. You are no longer building history. You are living it, one cold, lonely watch at a time. The echoes of the hammers and the cries of the overseers are gone, replaced by the silence of the wind and the occasional nervous rustle of a sentry's armor. You are a different man now, forged in the fire of the wall, and you know that your life will forever be intertwined with its fate. You have become a living extension of the wall itself, a final breathing layer of its defense. The stories you tell your comrades are about the family you left behind, about the day a man fell from the rampart, about the silent, haunting beauty of the empty plains. You are a keeper of the wall's secrets, a silent sentinel in a world of constant motion and change. You have become the wall. Centuries pass, and the wall, like the empire it defends, has its own cycles of decay and renewal. The Han Dynasty, for all its might, eventually crumbles. The wall falls into disrepair, its tamped earth sections eroding and its watchtowers crumbling. The nomadic tribes, no longer held at bay, raid the northern provinces with impunity. The great symbol of imperial power becomes a forgotten relic, a long, winding ghost across the hills, a testament to a glory that has long since passed. But history, as you've seen, has a way of repeating itself. The cycles of unification and division continue, and with each new dynasty, the wall is rediscovered and its purpose debated once more. It is not until the Ming Dynasty, nearly 1,000 years after the Han, that the wall is reborn in its most famous and formidable form. You are no longer a farmer or a soldier, but an artisan, a skilled stonemason. The Ming emperors, facing renewed threats from the north, decide to rebuild the wall on a scale and with a quality never before seen. The old crumbling tamped earth sections are replaced with massive stone and brick structures. The work is still incredibly difficult, but it's a different kind of labor. You're not just moving dirt, you're building with precision. The bricks, fired in massive kilns, are uniform and strong. The stone, quarried from the mountains, is cut and shaped with skill. The mortar, made from a mixture of lime, sticky rice, and egg whites, is incredibly strong and durable. A mainstream historical fact is that the Ming Dynasty's use of brick and stone made the wall not only more visually impressive, but also far more resistant to erosion and attack than its earlier incarnations. The wall we see today is, for the most part, the Ming Wall. It is a monument to a new era of technology, craftsmanship, and ambition. A quirky tidbit is that the sticky rice and egg white mortar wasn't just a myth. It was a scientifically sound solution. The amylopectin in the rice and the proteins in the egg whites created a unique organic polymer that bonded the lime and sand together, making the mortar stronger than the bricks themselves. Historians still argue about the true purpose of the Ming Wall. Was it a genuine defensive measure, or was it a form of political theater, a way to project an image of power and stability to both its own people and its enemies? For you, the stonemason, the purpose is simple: to create something that will last. You work with a sense of pride, a feeling that you are creating not just a wall, but a masterpiece. You are building with a purpose, with a sense of craftsmanship that was absent in the brutal, hurried work of the Qin dynasty. You are building a legacy, a testament to the enduring power of human skill and the unyielding will of an empire. You work in a team, and the camaraderie is different from the grim survival of the earlier dynasties. You share a pride in your craft, a sense of belonging to something greater than yourself. The air is filled with the sound of chisels on stone, the careful tap-tap of hammers on bricks, and the quiet murmur of men who know their trade. You are a part of a new generation of builders, a generation that is not just toiling for an emperor, but for a legacy. You look at the completed sections of the wall, their brickwork and stonework gleaming in the sun, and you feel a quiet sense of satisfaction. You are not just building a wall, you are building a monument, a work of art, a legacy that will outlast you and your children's children. The Ming Dynasty Wall is a project of immense scale, but it's also a project of immense organization. The workforce is no longer just a mass of conscripted farmers. Instead, you're part of a complex hierarchy of labor. At the bottom are the simple laborers, the ones who haul the stone and mix the mortar, much like the men of the Qin dynasty. But above them are the artisans, the stonemasons, like you, who cut and shape the blocks, the bricklayers who meticulously place each brick, and the master builders who oversee the entire process. You feel a sense of purpose and pride in your work that the earlier builders never had. You're not just a cog in a machine, you're a skilled craftsman, and your contribution is valued. The sound of the work is different too, less of a chaotic, rhythmic pounding, and more of a symphony of coordinated effort, a chorus of chisels and hammers working in harmony. You work with a sense of precision and artistry. The bricks are not all the same. Some are specially made for the parapets, some for the crenellations, and some for the arches of the watchtowers. You learn to read the architectural plans, a series of complex diagrams that tell you exactly where each piece of stone or brick should go. The work is still physically demanding, but it's also intellectually stimulating. You're a part of a team, working in harmony to create something beautiful and functional. A mainstream historical fact is that the Ming Dynasty's wall was not a single, continuous line, but a series of interconnected fortifications, with many parallel walls and even sections of trenches and rivers used as natural barriers. The scale of the project was so vast that it required a level of logistical and organizational skill that was unprecedented. A quirky tidbit, perhaps, is that the bricks were sometimes stamped with the name of the kiln they came from and the names of the officials who oversaw their production. This was a form of quality control, ensuring that everyone was accountable for the materials they produced. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the meticulous planning of the Ming Dynasty. Historians still argue whether the Ming Dynasty's wall was a more successful project than the earlier walls, because of its superior craftsmanship, or if it was ultimately a strategic failure, a monument that couldn't stop the empire's eventual decline. For you, the debate is irrelevant. You know that you are building something that will last, a symbol of the strength and resilience of your people. You look at the completed sections of the wall, their brickwork and stonework gleaming in the sun, and you feel a quiet sense of satisfaction. You are not just building a wall, you are building a monument, a work of art, a legacy that will outlast you and your children's children. You've become a part of the wall's fabric, a piece of its long and winding story. The calluses on your hands are no longer a mark of suffering, but a badge of honor, a symbol of your skill and your contribution to a legacy that will be remembered for all time. The sheer scale of the Ming wall building project was a logistical marvel, a challenge that required an immense network of people and resources. It wasn't just about moving stone and brick. It was about feeding, housing, and supplying hundreds of thousands of men in a desolate and often hostile environment. You see the constant flow of supply caravans, their carts groaning under the weight of rice, millet, and other provisions. The roads leading to the wall, themselves massive construction projects, are clogged with traffic. The logistics of the wall were, in many ways, just as impressive as the wall itself. The empire had to build a whole new infrastructure to support the construction and the garrisons that would eventually man the watchtowers. This massive undertaking required a level of planning and coordination that was almost unimaginable for its time, a testament to the organizational power of the Ming dynasty. The food, though still simple, is better and more reliable than what the early builders had. The empire has a system in place to ensure that the workers are fed and the soldiers who will one day take their place are provisioned. The camps are more permanent and more organized, a reflection of the more stable and powerful empire that is building the wall. A mainstream historical fact is that the Ming dynasty's logistical genius was not just in supplying the workers, but in creating a system of permanent garrisons and farms along the wall. These farms provided a local food source, reducing the need for long-distance supply lines and making the wall a self-sustaining frontier. It was a brilliant solution to a problem that had plagued the earlier dynasties. A quirky tidbit, perhaps, is that the Ming dynasty's logistical system was so advanced that they even used a form of early standardized payment, a kind of token or a bill of exchange, to pay the local merchants and farmers who supplied the wall with food and other provisions. This created a kind of frontier economy that was intertwined with the wall itself. Historians still argue whether the wall's eventual failure was due to the empire's inability to maintain this complex logistical network, or if it was simply a strategic flaw from the start. For you, the stonemason, you see a system that is working. You see the carts arriving on time, the food being distributed fairly, and the morale of the men, though still low, is not the desperate, soul-crushing despair of the Qin dynasty. You are a part of a well-oiled machine, and you feel the power and stability of the empire in every brick you lay, in every stone you set. You are building not just a wall, but a system, a network of defense and supply that will hopefully stand the test of time. You watch as a caravan of supplies arrives, and you feel a sense of security that was unknown to your ancestors. The wall is a living, breathing entity, and you are a vital part of its lifeblood. The work is hard, but it is not without a sense of purpose and a feeling that you are a part of something that will last for generations. The sheer scale of the operation is a constant reminder of the empire's might. As the Ming Dynasty's wall rose, a new layer of debate settled over the project, a quiet murmur among the scholars and generals in the capital that you, the stonemason on the frontier, might only hear in passing whispers. The core question was this: was the wall truly a military success? From your perspective on the ground, you know the wall provides a sense of security that your ancestors never had. You've heard the stories of the Han Dynasty garrisons, constantly on edge, constantly fighting small skirmishes. Here, the wall provides a clear, physical barrier. The watchtowers, with their well-coordinated signal system, mean that a threat can be identified and a response can be organized before it ever reaches the inner provinces. The wall isn't just a static defense. It's an active system, a massive linear fortress that changes the entire nature of warfare on the frontier. The nomadic raiders, who once relied on speed and surprise, are now forced to concentrate their forces at specific gates or attempt a difficult and costly siege. This makes their attacks predictable and therefore easier to counter. A mainstream historical fact is that the Ming Wall in its final form did not completely prevent raids or invasions. The Manchu, for example, eventually bypassed the wall entirely by exploiting a weak point at a major pass, and later through internal treachery. The wall's purpose, therefore, was not to be impenetrable, but to make a full-scale invasion so difficult and expensive that it was strategically unfeasible. Its effectiveness was in its deterrence, in the immense logistical and military challenge it presented to any would-be invader. A quirky tidbit, perhaps, is that the wall was so large and so well known that early European visitors often wrote about it as a kind of fantastical, almost mythical structure, a symbol of China's immense power and isolation. They couldn't quite grasp the sheer scale of it, and their reports often blurred the line between fact and legend. Historians still argue whether the cost of building and maintaining the wall was worth the security it provided. For you, the debate feels abstract. You look at the wall rising before you, its solid stone and brickwork a testament to your own hard work, and you know its value. It is the difference between a life of constant fear and a life of relative safety. It is the reason your children can sleep at night without the fear of a sudden, violent raid. The wall is not just a strategic defense. It is a promise, a symbol of the empire's will to protect its people, and you are a part of that promise. The debate over its effectiveness is a luxury of the court and the academy. On the frontier, its value is self-evident. As generations of your family have now been linked to the wall, its presence is as much a part of your identity as the name of your village. But the wall is not a monolith. It is an economic engine, a logistical marvel, and a frontier city all rolled into one. You witness the constant hum of activity that supports the garrisons. Supply caravans, as you've seen, are a constant. They bring not just food and weapons, but also salt, silk, and other goods that pass through the wall's gates on their way to the west. The watchtowers, once just strategic outposts, have become small hubs of commerce, with merchants and traders setting up stalls to sell their wares to the soldiers and the few travelers who pass through. The wall is no longer just a barrier. It's a bustling artery of the empire. A mainstream historical fact is that the wall, particularly during the Ming Dynasty, was a major factor in the internal economy of the empire. The immense cost of its construction and maintenance required a sophisticated system of taxation and tribute, which in turn spurred the growth of industries like brickmaking and metallurgy. The wall's shadow extended far beyond the northern frontier, affecting the lives of farmers and artisans in distant provinces, who supplied the raw materials and paid the taxes that funded the project. It was a massive, government-sponsored infrastructure project that drove the entire economy. A quirky tidbit, perhaps, is that the garrisons on the wall often had a system of internal currency, or a barter system, trading goods and services among themselves in a kind of miniature economy. You might trade a piece of your hand-carved wood for a soldier's extra rations of rice, a small, quiet economy existing in the vast shadow of the empire. Historians still argue whether the wall's economic impact was a net positive for the empire, spurring growth and innovation, or if it was a colossal drain on resources that ultimately contributed to the empire's decline. To you, the artisan, the wall is a source of work and a place of belonging. You are a part of a community of builders and soldiers, all of whom have been drawn to this remote frontier. You see your work in every brick, every stone, and you feel a sense of ownership, a sense of pride that your family has been a part of this story for generations. The wall is a living thing, and you are a part of its lifeblood. It is not a place of desolation and despair, as it was for your Qin ancestors, but a place of purpose and community. The quiet camaraderie of the men, the shared stories, the small acts of kindness, all of these things make the wall a home. You look out at the long, winding structure, its gray stone and red brick, a sharp contrast to the green hills and the blue sky, and you feel a quiet sense of satisfaction. You are not just building a wall, you are building a legacy, a community, a home. The final, dramatic years of the Ming Wall are marked by whispers of its ultimate failure. You are an old man now, and the wall has become a part of your daily life, a constant presence on the horizon. The work of building is long since over for you, but you watch as the soldiers patrol its length, a new generation of defenders. Yet, even in the quiet moments, you hear the arguments, the debates about the wall's true effectiveness. On the one hand, the wall has stood for generations, a silent testament to the empire's might. It has kept the northern raiders at bay for the most part, and has allowed the inner provinces to prosper in relative peace. It is the reason your family has survived and thrived. But on the other hand, there are rumors, whispers of a new, powerful tribe to the north, the Manchu, who are not like the old nomadic raiders. They are a cohesive, organized force, and they see the wall not as a barrier, but as a challenge. A mainstream historical fact is that the Ming dynasty's final defeat came not from a direct, overwhelming assault on the wall, but from a betrayal at one of its key passes. In 1644, the gates of the Shanhai Pass were opened by a Ming general, allowing the Manchu army to march through and eventually conquer the capital. The wall's strength was not in its physical structure, but in the loyalty of the men who defended it. The debate, therefore, is not about the wall's physical strength, but about its strategic purpose. A quirky tidbit, perhaps, is that the final Ming emperor, Chongzhen, was so desperate that he once considered tearing down the wall, believing its immense cost was draining the empire's resources and leaving the inner provinces vulnerable to rebellion. He was eventually convinced not to, but the debate shows just how contentious the wall's purpose was, even to the very end. Historians still argue whether the wall's purpose was to keep invaders out or to keep the Chinese in, a symbol of a defensive, isolationist mindset that ultimately led to the Ming dynasty's decline. You, the old stonemason, have a more personal perspective. You know the wall's purpose. It was not to be perfect, not to be impenetrable, but to be a constant, a symbol of a people's will to endure. You have seen the wall's beginnings in the tamped earth of the Qin dynasty, its expansion under the Han, and its final, glorious rebirth under the Ming. You have seen the men who built it, the men who defended it, and the families who lived in its shadow. The wall is a part of you, a part of your family's story, and a part of the history of your people. It is a monument to human effort, to human suffering, and to human resilience. You look at the wall, its gray stone and red brick, a testament to your own hard work, and you feel a quiet sense of satisfaction. It may not have been perfect, but it was a promise, and you helped build that promise. The wall's fate is now sealed, but its legacy is just beginning. The Ming Dynasty, for all its glory and its colossal construction projects, has fallen. The Manchu, who passed through its gates, have established a new dynasty, the Qing. You are an old man, your hands gnarled and scarred by a lifetime of labor, but your mind is sharp, and you remember the stories of your ancestors, the men who built the tamped earth wall of the Qin and the reinforced sections of the Han. You have lived to see the wall in all its forms, from a brutal instrument of imperial will to a magnificent symbol of an empire's strength. You watch as the Qing emperors, the very people who bypass the wall to conquer China, decide to not tear it down, but to preserve it. They recognize its symbolic power, its immense weight in the collective memory of the Chinese people. The wall is no longer a military frontier. It is a monument, a historical artifact, a symbol of a past they now claim as their own. A mainstream historical fact is that the Qing dynasty largely abandoned the practice of maintaining the Great Wall as a military barrier. Instead, they focused on diplomacy and control of the northern tribes. The wall, therefore, went from a functioning defense system to a symbol of cultural heritage, its physical integrity slowly deteriorating, but its symbolic power only growing stronger. It became a kind of cultural monument, a place for poets and painters to find inspiration, a silent witness to the centuries of history that had unfolded in its shadow. A quirky tidbit, perhaps, is that for a time some sections of the wall were used by local farmers as a source of building materials, with families taking bricks and stones for their own homes and fields. The very wall that once defined their lives was now being repurposed, brick by brick, into the fabric of their daily existence. Historians still argue about the wall's ultimate impact on Chinese history. Was it a success, a testament to the enduring power of the Chinese people? Or was it a failure, a symbol of an empire's inability to adapt to a changing world? For you, the old stonemason, the answer is simple. The wall is a success because it exists. It is a monument to the generations of men who built it, who sacrificed their lives to its creation. It is a testament to the enduring power of a people to create something magnificent out of sheer will and brute force. You look out at the wall, its long, winding form, a familiar presence on the horizon, and you feel a quiet sense of satisfaction. It may not be a perfect defense. It may have been bypassed, but it has endured. It has outlasted emperors and dynasties. It is a part of the land, a part of the people, and a part of you. The wall is not just a structure. It is a memory, a story, a living testament to the human spirit. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and purple, the last light of the day fading over the gentle rolling hills. The air cools, and a soft, gentle breeze rustles the leaves of a nearby tree. The silence returns, a deep and peaceful hush that seems to settle over the land, a silence that you, the old stonemason, have come to know so well. The wall, a long dark shadow against the twilight sky, is no longer a symbol of toil or a barrier of defense, but a quiet sentinel, a memory cast in stone. Its story is not just one of grand battles and political intrigue, but of the countless lives that were woven into its fabric. The lives of farmers, soldiers, and artisans who, through their sweat and sacrifice, created something that would last for all time.